Hi, this is Jonathan Alexander. I want to talk about Canadian Threshold for a bit. As you may or may not know, there's a monthly Legacy tournament on Magic Online called the Legacy Challenge. This month I chose to play Canadian Threshold in that tournament. Slightly adjusted for Fatal Push entering the format. And first off, I have not played any matches, even games with the deck before the tournament. I gave it my rough draw to Ethan Gajewski, Mortician's Union on Magic Online. Sorry for butchering your name if I did that. He played with the deck, we've been talking about it, and he made some adjustments. He liked the deck, so I chose to play it even without testing. Also, shoutouts to the Salt Mine, especially Sean and Steven, for supplying me with cards. As you can see, I do not have True Name Nemesis or Wastelands. I borrowed them from them, and I'm very grateful for that. So let's talk about the list. With Fatal Push entering the format, I think Tarmogoyf is pretty bad. You may have read my last article about it. It's the Weekly Wars number 17. I will link it in the description for a more detailed explanation on why I think Tarmogoyf is bad now. But mostly it's just it trades inefficiently, and I don't like that in Delver Mirrors. With Tarmogoyf not being in the deck, Delver of Secrets would be the only creature that dies to Fatal Push or basically any kind of spot removal that isn't Dismember or Swords to Plowshares. So Delver of Secrets is very likely to just die on sight. So I decided, okay, let's try a list without Delver. All creatures that do not die to Lightning Bolt, Abrupt Decay, or Fatal Push. I think the number one creature is still Nimble Mongoose. After that we have True Name Nemesis. I'm a bit wary of playing more than 3 copies. I think even 3 copies might be too much. I'm not sure about that yet, but I thought 4 copies was definitely pushing it, and I still wanted 9 creatures, so I chose to play Hooting Mandrills instead. I have played Set Adrift alongside Nimble Mongoose before, which is another Delve spell, and I thought that was never really an issue, so maybe Hooting Mandrills, even 2 copies, was okay. It turns out it is. Hooting Mandrills is pretty good. It attacks through True Name Nemesis. It's really, really good against Young Pyromancer, and basically all the format. It's a great creature. I will talk about it a bit more when I get to the matchups. Basically, this is still the same Canadian Threshold core that I've been playing for the last, 5 years or so. We have the 8 cantrips, the 14 lands, still on Delta and Flooded Strand, because those are the fetches I play in all my decks in Magic Online, and this way people don't get to see by my fetches what deck I'm playing. For example, you see here Miracles. I play Deltas in those as well. In Storm, when I don't play Bayou, I also play Flooded Strand. I think that's an important thing, so people don't know that you're on Stifle. What I have changed about the list is cutting the 10th creature, because the number of creatures that are available is rather low, and also now creatures don't really die anymore, so you don't need as many of them. Instead, I have another removal spell in Barbarian Ring, which is great because it's land drop that is also basically sudden shock, but it also gets recurred with Life from the Loam, which is the next edition over Winter Orb, which I used to run in the main deck. Barbarian Ring was originally Ghost Quarter, but Ethan said he didn't like it, and then it became Horizon Canopy for a bit, I think, which also wasn't great. So I suggested either Cephalid Colosseum or Barbarian Ring, and I think Ethan just tested Ring first and said it was good, and then I also stuck with Ring, and I must say Ring is indeed very good. And I've mostly prepared this deck for 8 matchups. There's more that's on the radar, but that's only in the form of splash damage. Those 8 decks are really what I want to beat. The first one is still Miracles. It's the number 1 deck to beat in the format. It's why I have 3 copies of Winter Orb and 3 Pyroblast. Spell Pierce, Flusterstorm are really just additional cards. I don't think they're necessary, but I still like having them. The Surgical is also a card I bring against Miracles, but I won't get into boarding plans before I actually get to the matches. I will, however, link them in the description below for this video. Next up we have the Delver Mirrors, mainly Grixis, Dark Threshold and Team America. Those are one of the main reasons why I want this creature package. None of my creatures die to their removal outside of Dismember, which is a card I'm very happy to fight over, because if my opponents dismember Hooting Mandrills, that's already a free time walk in terms of damage Mandrills does, and if I force that or counter that and they don't have anything else to deal with the Mandrills, and also no good blockers, that's, well, pretty good for me. The removal slots for those decks are Forkbolt and Submerge. There really isn't much you want to do. You board some Pyroblast against Grixis, but against Darkthresh and Team America is really just Forkbolt and Submerge. Your main deck configuration is pretty good already. Spell Snare is not the greatest card against all these decks. I like 2 copies against Grixis, but I don't like it that much when the Dark Threshold decks don't have Tarmogoyf to hit it. So it's mostly swapping those for removal spells that actually deal with creatures. Next up we have the combo decks, Storm, Sneak and Show. First off, people have voiced concern about not playing Delver for those matchups. I'm not actually sure if Delver of Secrets is a better creature in those matchups than Hooting Mandrills is. Delver you need to play early, and then it also needs to transform, and later in the game Hooting Mandrills is just simply the better clock because it's a 4-4 rather than a 3-2 that might just be a 1-1 for a few turns. So Hooting Mandrills usually kills in 4 hits. For Delver it's generally closer to 5 or 6. You do have Lightning Bolts to help out, but that's also true for Mandrills. And Mandrills is just so much better in the late game. Obviously Mandrills doesn't have the upside of pitching to Force of Will, but I think I can live with that. So specifically for Sneak, we have also the Winter Orbs, which I like, and then the 5 pieces of counter magic and the Surgical Extraction, which sometimes is decent value against them. Storm, we have a Null Rod, and also the counter is Surgical. Surgical is there over Grafdigger's Cage because of Elves. I talked to the Elves players and they said Julian also, they said you are always boarding Abrupt Decay against Canadian Threshold to deal with Delver and Tarmogoyf, and I think it's very unlikely for them to expect me to not run Delver, so they board Decay anyway, and then I board Cage, and it's the only card it hits, and therefore Cage always dies if I play it, so I'm not even boarding Cage against them, and against Black-Red Reanimator, Surgical is just a better card, because it's more or less the 5th Force of Will, which is something I can get behind. We do, however, have the Null Rod now, which deals with all the artifact mana, and Wasteland on Volcanic and then Null Rod to completely shut them out of red mana is something that does come up, and it's very annoying for Storm to play against. Believe me, I've been in that position. And the next matchup I want to prepare for is Death in Texas, where the Null Rod also shines. Null Rod and Winter Orb is such a great combination against them. Null Rod shuts off their vials, makes them hardcast their creatures, and Winter Orb really punishes them for that because their creatures cost more than 1 mana. And in general, they're a very mana intensive deck. Rishid Import, for example, on the Winter Orb cost them 2 lands where it only costs you 1. That's a favorable trade for you, and also your deck is much leaner than theirs. So basically Winter Orb means Rishid Import is never gonna get activated. Null Rod also punishes their equipment. I still have the split with Ancient Grudge because there's still Chalice decks in the format, mainly Agrolome. There's also lands which sometimes has Challenge, but they also have like Sphere, and sometimes you just want to kill Mox Diamonds, so I prefer Grudge against them than Null Rod. Grudge has the upside as compared to Null Rod to be able to kill Batterskull, which Null Rod basically does nothing against unless you get to kill the creature, which this deck isn't great at. You only have Dismember, and you can, well, double bolt or ring it, but that's not too great. Notably, Sudden Demise is a card you want against elves, but not against Death and Texas, which is those two matchups and the Delver Mirrors are why the removal slots look so weird. What you want is different for each of those decks. Demise or any 2-mana sweeper I think is too clunky against Death and Texas. I'd rather have the extra cards that kill Mother of Runes, which are Electricity and Forked Bolt. So those are the two cards I bought against Death and Texas. Against elves, I'd much rather have Sudden Demise, but I can't run 2 because then I get too low against D&T. So that's where the split comes from. Next up we have Agrolome, which I think is just a good matchup, but there really isn't anything specifically for the deck. Maybe the Ancient Grudge, if you don't account for lands, or Batterskull, but I like Grudge against them. They have Chalice, they have Moxen, which you don't like seeing when you try to Winter Orb or Loam Lock them. I'm not sure which of the two is better, Winter Orb or Loam. As with elves, you suddenly no longer have targets for Abrupt Decay, so Winter Orb I think gets slightly worse. I'm not sure, however, how good Loam is. It might be very good. But overall, I think the matchup is just very good for you because they have a hard time dealing with Nimble Mongoose and True Lame, so long as you can keep their Knights in check and prevent Liliana and Toxic Deluge from resolving. And the next matchup, the last one I specifically have on my radar, is Shardless. Shardless is a very weird matchup because I initially thought it was very bad when I first started getting back to Canadian in 2015 when I was testing for GPC tag. We thought the matchup was just very, very bad for Canadian because everything Shardless did was just outclassing Canadian. But somehow that changed. I stopped losing the matchup. And initially I thought the philosophy to beat them is just have more cards than them. So they have a lot of cards, but most of those cards are really, really bad. Like Shardless Agent is not a real card when it's on the board. Like, yes, you get a free 2/2, but the 2/2 is basically worthless. Deathrite Shaman is good in the early game, but really bad once your graveyard is big and you have a board presence, because then it's just a 1/2 that drains for 2 or gains them 2 life at the cost of a card and a land every turn. That's not very good. So I initially had Painful Truths for the matchup and then had Ancient Grudge to just kill the artifact creatures, Baleful Strix and Shardless Agent, and that has been working out really well for me. Yes, so those are the matchups I wanted to prepare for. And as for the format of this video series, I will upload this alongside the first round, and then my plan is to have one of the matches of the tournament each day for the next week. I think that's better than uploading all at once because it's just too much at once. Nobody's gonna watch it if I upload everything at the same time. So please bear with that. I will link boarding plans in the description. If there's an update on the list, I will also share it with the next few videos. And yes, I think that's it. I think I talked about every card, more or less. And yeah, let's get into the matches. Have fun.